House of Confusion. The caravan moved in the promising darkness of dawn. My heart pulled back, my throat filled with sadness and tears, and the stars gathered above us, looking at us and us looking at them, and there was no consolation. I also left my country about 5 years ago, frustrated by the betrayal of my beloved mother and governors. I turned into a traveler again, thinking about countries and notebooks, but where is the heart and where is the mind? I said, these stars are closer to me than a bride and children. The caravans will continue to travel carrying money and hopes, so who will carry the sorrows? The darkness disappears, the light shines, and the desert appears without borders, as if it were annihilation. You wonder what they say about me in the homeland, and why I did not encounter Kani bin Hamdis again, and I said to myself, the best thing to do, O traveler, is to see, hear, and record, to avoid experiences, to return to your dreams of the mountain, and to carry the healing medicine for the homeland's wounds, and we covered the distance between the east and Al-Hira in a month. Then we camped close to the Zamam oasis to enter Dar al-Hira at midnight. We continued walking into the night until the wall of the house became visible to us under the light of the stars, and we proceeded to approach its large door. In front of the entrance, in the light of torches, stood the customs director. He appeared to be a soldier with his helmet, shield, sword, and short overalls. He said in a strong voice so that the whole convoy could hear, "Welcome to Al-Hira, the capital of Dar al-Hira. You will find policemen everywhere, ask them what you want and follow their instructions carefully, making your trip a good memory without any unpleasantness." I said to myself, this is a welcome and a warning. We broke through the door and then divided. The merchants went to the Souk Hotel, and a guide took me to the Guraba Hotel. We penetrated deep darkness, in which the torches of the policemen floated here and there like stars, and we approached the hotel, and we saw its grand entrance in the light of the torches, and light shone from some of the windows. It is a large building built of stones, but it consists of one floor. I quickly went behind my carry-on bags to my room. A medium room contains a mattress that is an arm's length above the floor, with a purple cover that suits the mild autumn weather. It contains a clothes rack and a small sofa. There is a candlestick in the middle niche in which a thick, medium-length candle is burning. The floor is covered with a patterned mat. There is a civilization, and there is no doubt that there is a great difference between it and the East. I had barely taken off my travel clothes and put on my nightgown, when a man of medium height, dark-skinned in his 50s, wearing a light cloak, came to me and said, "Important, the owner of the hotel." I shook his hand and said, "Kandil Muhammad Al-Anabai, a traveler. Do you want dinner? I ate it on the way." He smiled and said, "Tonight, sleep and food for a dinar, and payment in advance." I estimated my stay to be 10 days, so I paid him 10 dinars, and he asked me, "From which country?" "Dar al-Islam." He warned, "Only the religion of confusion is practiced in Hira." He reminded me of my tragedy, but I asked him, "What is the religion of confusion, Mr. Ham?" "Our God is the king." He greeted me and left. I blew the candle and extinguished it, and went to bed saying to myself, "The king is after the moon, what a delusion." But be careful, doesn't the governor in your country act like a god? Enjoy rest after the troubles of travel, and enjoy sleep from all the troubles of life. I woke up earlier than I thought, and immediately realized that it was a loud noise coming from the road that had shaken me from my sleep. I opened a window and saw in the early light a powerful army, both knights and men, advancing towards the city gate with the beat of a drum. I started watching and wondering, and when the road was clear, I asked for breakfast, and a copper tray came to me with food consisting of milk, butter, cheese, bread, and a bunch of grapes. I was about to ask the servant about the army's march, but caution caught me. I dressed to go out, and found the hotel entrance crowded with people chatting. It was war, as many had expected. Against the East, no doubt. To liberate a people from 5 tyrants. It will be a new history for the East under the rule of a just God. My chest tightened and my thoughts flew, swirling around a bride and her children. What will be their fate? It is not the desire to liberate the people of the East that prompted the war, but the greed for pastures and the treasures of the 5 masters, and severe oppression will occur to convert the people from worshipping the moon to worshipping the king. Lives will be lost, honor will be damaged, and thousands will be displaced. Doesn't this happen in wars that break out between people of one religion that calls for monotheism and brotherhood? The hotel owner came to me before I left and said, it was decided to raise the rent by half a dinar to meet the burdens of the war. So I performed it in smallness, and he said with a smile, it is not much for the sake of liberating the slaves. So I secretly cursed him as I cursed all false slogans. Out of great anxiety, I went to the souk hotel and found my fellow merchants gathered in the lobby. I sat with them and followed their conversations. Days of war are not safe. Our money may be wasted to the last dirham. But prices will also rise. And the additional fees? The caravan owner said, wars never go away, and their benefit to trade is greater than their harm. I do not think that this war will last long. Confusion is incomparably stronger than the East. In less than a week it will all be over. My thoughts focused on my lost family, and I decided to stay in Al-Hira, close to the East. I had a new hope that after joining the East to Al-Hira, I could travel to the East. Perhaps God would reunite me with my family through His mercy and generosity, and perhaps I could marry her and take her with me on my journey to a new homeland and a new religion. I was blessed with this new hope, so my heart was open to wandering and journeying, and discovering Al-Hira, the capital of Dar al-Hira. I walked without stopping and tirelessly, looking and listening, and recording it in my memory. It is a city like one of my country's cities. It has squares and gardens, streets and squares, buildings, houses, schools, and hospitals full of people, and in every police station, there are plenty of places for dancing and singing. Its market is large and spacious, with many shops, and contains goods from Al-Hira and from all countries. The mild autumn weather invigorated me with unlimited activity, and the days of discovery, watching, and recording continued. From time to time, I visit the souk hotel, meet with comrades, and sit with the caravan owner. He once said to me, the weather in Al-Hira is generally mild, with tolerable summers and acceptable winters. When I told him about the large number of policemen, he said to me, security is stable, but they protect the state. The truth is that I walked around the neighborhoods of the rich, which are beautiful and quiet, their palaces are museums, and their residents move about in a hurry. I also visited the neighborhoods of the poor with their huts, ruins, depressing climate, and unhappy people. I said to the caravan owner, they claim that the war broke out to free the slaves in the East. Could they please free the slaves of Al-Hira? The man asked in a whisper, what do you say about our country, the land of revelation? I said sadly, there is no bad thing I encountered on my journey that did not remind me of my sad country. The man said to me as he walked away from me, you must see the palace of the God King. This was not lost on me, as I found it standing majestic and lofty in isolation in the middle of a void surrounded by palm trees and guards. It is like the governor's palace in my country, or more luxurious, and the guard barracks stand on one side, and the temple of the God King stands on the other side, and my sight was caught by a field of columns surrounded by a fence of iron, so I approached it until I saw human heads separated from their bodies hanging from the tops of the columns. I trembled at the horror of the sight. I do not deny that I saw a miniature version of him in my youth in my homeland. They exposed the leaders to rebuke, discipline, and admonition. I approached a guard and asked him, can a stranger know the crime of these dead people? He answered me dryly, rebellion against the God King. So I went to thank him, and I was certain that they were martyrs of justice and freedom, in comparison with what usually happens in the lands of revelation. It is a strange world full of madness, and it would be truly a miracle if I found the panacea in Dar al-Jabal. I asked Ham, the hotel owner, in the evening, what sights in Dar al-Hira are worth seeing outside the capital. The man said confidently, other than the capital, there is only the countryside, and there is nothing in it that pleases travelers. I began writing down the scenes, and that relieved me from thinking about a bride and her children. I stayed up one night in a club and was amazed by the orgy of drunkards and the debauchery of immoral people. Which pardons my pen from delving into it. When I passed the souk hotel, the caravan owner said to me, we are going tomorrow morning, so will you come with us? I answered him firmly, no, I will stay for a while. Arousa attracted me to stay, but I was pained by the frightening loneliness that awaited me. I woke up at dawn and imagined the caravan moving at the sound of Al-Hadi. A call like fate that invites me to stay, and a hope for happiness that does not want to fade away. I did not want to waste my time in vain, so I was active in obtaining information that was not available in viewing. I did not find in the hotel owner an opportunity for conversation like what I had found in the East, so I asked him to direct me to the wise man of this house if he would allow me to meet him. Ham said, "I can prepare a meeting for you, as happened with others." In the afternoon, I went to the house of the sage Dizang. A beautiful house surrounded by a garden full of flowers and fruit trees. He greeted me with a kind smile and sat me on the sofa next to him. He was 50 years old, with a strong body and clear features. His white cap matched his white cloak. He asked me to introduce myself, so I did, mentioning my name, my mission, and my country. He said, "Your country is great too. Tell me what you liked about our home." So I said to myself, countless things: civilization, beauty, power and order. He asked in an arrogant manner, "What do you think of a war that we declare, sacrificing our children in order to liberate Dar Gariba? This is something we have never heard of before." He said with certainty, "We provide people with an example of a happy and honorable homeland." So I bowed my head in agreement, and he said, "Perhaps you will ask about the secret of all this." They referred to me as the wise man of this country, and the truth is that I am only a student. Our Lord is the wise, He is God, and He is the source of all wisdom and goodness. He sits on the throne, then isolates himself in a pavilion and fasts until the light shines from him. He knows that God has dwelt in him, and that he has become the worshipped God. At that time, he performs his work, seeing everything with the eyes of God, so we receive eternal wisdom from him in everything, and after that we are only required to believe and obey. I followed him with interest, secretly asking my Lord for forgiveness, but he continued his speech, saying, "He creates the army, chooses its commanders to be the army of victory, appoints rulers from his holy family, and elects leaders from the elite to work in the land and factories, but the rest of the people have no holiness or talents. They work in handicrafts, and we provide them with food, followed by these animals, and next to the animals are plants and inanimate objects, a complete and precise system that places each individual in his place, thus achieving the most complete justice." He was silent for a long time as he looked at me, then he said, "Therefore, we have more than one philosophy. We address the elite in ways that strengthen strength, dominance, and growth in their souls. We use this by providing them with education and medicine. As for the others, we strengthen in them the talents of obedience, submissiveness, and contentment, and guide them to the spiritual treasure buried in the depths of each of them, who through patience and diligence prepares for them peace. With this dual philosophy, happiness is achieved for everyone, each according to his preparation and what has been prepared for him. We are the happiest people on earth." I thought about what was being said and what was not being said, then I asked him, "Who owns the land and the factories?" "God is the creator and the owner." "And the elite's relationship with it?" "They are its acting owners, and the rent is divided equally between them and God." So I took a new step, wondering, how is God's money spent? He laughed for the first time and said, "Can a God be asked about what he does? So who spends on schools and hospitals? The elite as a wok for them and their children." Then he wondered with pride, "Isn't this perfection itself?" So I said, thinking to myself, it is what is usually said about the house of the mountain. He shouted forcefully, "Dar al-Hira is the abode of the mountain." I said clearly, "You are right, wise Dizang." He said with confidence and certainty, "To live under God's guidance, and guidance is the greatest justice and happiness a person can aspire to." I said sneakily, "That is why I am so amazed at those rebels whose hanging heads I saw." He shouted angrily, "Human nature is not devoid of deviation and evil, but they are few in any case." At the end of the interview, he offered me an apple and a glass of milk. So I returned to my unit in the hotel, thinking and sad, and I remembered my teacher, Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili, so I asked him from a distance, "Which is worse, my lord, the one who claims divinity out of ignorance or the one who uses the Quran to serve his personal purposes?" I suffered the blame for days, then I received news that spread with the autumn breezes confirming that the Al-Hira army had won and achieved its goals, and that Dar al-Mashriq had become the southern province of Dar al-Hira. The poor flocked to the streets declaring their joy at the victory, as if they were the ones who would reap its fruits. I asked with great concern, "How are you, bride, and how are you, my children?" And I arrived early on the day of the return of the victorious army, so I took my position not far from the hotel, on the royal road extending from the entrance to Al Hira to the king's palace. The crowding was so intense on both sides that it seemed to me that no one of the residents remained in their home or place of work. At noon, the beats of drums came to us, and the procession was led by knights carrying 5 heads in the points of their spears, the heads of the masters who owned the cities of the east. This is how I saw for the first time the gentleman to whom I went one day to bargain to buy a bride. This was followed by a long line of prisoners of war, walking naked and handcuffed between 2 rows of guards, and the army divisions of cavalry and footmen followed in a stormy atmosphere with fervent cheering. A day of victory and joy, but the bloody tragedies he left behind are known only to God. A strange human life that can be summed up in 2 words, blood and ululations. At the tail end of the army, the captive women walked in the arms of the guards. My heart skipped a beat, and she appeared to my eyes as a bride as I had seen her for the first time, or even as I had seen her leading her father into the neighborhood where I was born. A visual shift between broken faces and naked bodies. My eagerness was confirmed, and my eyes settled on the face of a bride. She is a bride, with her slender body and beautiful, miserable face, walking forward, stunned, desperate, and lost. I was engulfed in activity. My gaze stuck to her. I rushed along the line of captives, not caring who I bumped into, or their protests, or their false accusations. But I ran after naked women's bodies. I called out to her repeatedly, and my voice faded into the rising roar of voices. I did not succeed in drawing her attention or alerting her, until I was detained by the guards who prevented the crowds from entering the palace square, which is reserved for the elite of the people of Hira. This is how it appeared and disappeared like a shooting star, leaving me to madness and despair. And where are the children? Are they now living with their grandfather? I relieved my distress by revealing my secret to the hotel owner, and he told me, "You may be offered for sale in the slave market." I said in doubt, "But it is a war of liberation." He said, "Except the female captives, who will receive special treatment." I blessed this hypocrisy as a hole of hope in a black sky. I clung more to staying, and I went around the slave market every day, and my dream of reunification defied despair. One evening, the hotel owner greeted me with an encouraging smile and said, "Tomorrow the captives will be put up for sale." I slept fitfully that night, and I went to the market and was the first to go. When a bride was offered, I stormed into the auction with determination. She appeared in a green dress for the first time in her life, and her beauty was evident, despite the intense sadness. She was looking inside her exhausted self and did not see me, nor did she follow what was happening. Only one person remained with me in the bidding. I heard whispering that he was a representative of the sage Dizang. The auction was awarded to me for 30 dinars, and when it was paid to me, she recognized me and threw herself in my hands, sobbing, to the amazement of everyone in the market. There was no opportunity to exchange a conversation, so I took her outside, and on the way I could not help but ask her, "How are the children, bride?" But I stopped pursuing her due to her extreme anger until I was alone with her in my room at the hotel. There I hugged her warmly and left her on the sofa until she could get dressed for herself. Then I said, "I am sad because of the trouble I have endured." She said in a strange voice, "But you didn't see anything. Tell me, bride, for I am about to go crazy." She said, with tears flowing, "About what?" "It's terrible. They stormed the tent, killed my father for no reason, and arrested me. Where are the boys? I don't know. They were killed, they got lost, leave the madness to me." I said, magnifying my fears, "Why do they kill children?" "No. They are somewhere. We will find them. They are monsters. Why do they mutilate us after the victory over our army? But they are monsters." It was a full moon night, and God was present, seeing and hearing, but doing nothing. I said consolingly, "In any case, we were reunited, and my heart was telling me that mercy would come." I shouted, "There is no mercy, and I will not see my children." So I said with hope, "Bride, life has many evils, but its goodness is also abundant. I do not believe. You will see. We will leave with the first convoy to the east to search for the children. When do you get up?" "It lasts 10 days. It rang to nothing in deep sadness, and my heart overflowed with nostalgia like an exploding eye, and we had fun in our long emptiness by wandering around the city, watching, making wishes, and preparing to travel. However, Ham, the hotel owner, was preparing a surprise for me, so he invited me to his room. He looked at me with some embarrassment and said, "I have unpleasant news." I asked sarcastically, "More than I have?" He said quietly, "Wise Dizem desires to possess your girl." I was astonished and said sharply, "I hope you consider her my wife." "He will pay you the price. It is not a commodity." He said to me in an advisory tone, "Dizem is a strong man, and he is one of those close to God." I said, managing my annoyance, "Strangers in your country are safe." He said warmly, "Think again, for your own sake." I said with determination, "My opinion on this issue is the same and does not change." I was confused. Should I convey the conversation to a bride? Am I adding a new sadness to her sorrows? The truth is that I felt sorry for disturbing the peace of her remaining dream. I wondered, could Dizem snatch a bride from me by the force of his influence? I remembered the governor's chamberlain who had stolen Halima from me in my homeland, but I was not reassured of a stable opinion. All the time, I felt a danger chasing me, and that my happiness did not stand on 2 feet or have wings. On the morning of the day, for days before departure, a servant summoned me to meet Ham in his room. There I found a police officer. Ham introduced me to him and said, "You will go with me to meet the head of the Metropolitan Police." I asked him about the reason and he claimed ignorance of it. I asked to tell my girl, and the officer said, "Ham will do this for you." We went to the General Police Department on Royal Street and I appeared before the director, who sat on a sofa among some of his aides. He looked at me with a look that I was uncomfortable with and asked me, "Are you Kandil Muhammad Al-Anabi the traveler?" I answered in the affirmative, and he said, "You are accused of mocking the religion of this house that hosts you." I said strongly and clearly, "This is a baseless accusation." He said coldly, "There are witnesses." She shouted, "No one with a conscience can testify to that." He said angrily, "Do not stab innocent people, and leave that to the judge's discretion." And he arrested me. The next morning, I was brought to court, and the accusation was announced, but I rejected it. 5 witnesses came, led by Ham, the hotel owner, and they gave one testimony, as if it were a piece of archives, after they had taken the oath. The court issued its ruling to imprison me for life, and to confiscate my money and possessions, and thus Aruza entered into the confiscation. This all happened between 1 day and 1 night. I tasted the bitter taste of despair, and I knew that it was a reality that happened, not a story that was told. A bride was lost, the journey vanished, the dream of the mountain abode dissipated, my very existence in this world disappeared. The prison was on the outskirts of the city in a desert area. It was a spacious underground place, with narrow openings in the ceiling, its walls were made of large stones, and its floor was sandy. Every prisoner had only pants and a fur coat. It was surrounded by a suffocating atmosphere with a foul smell, half dark as if it were dawn. The sun shines in it. I looked around and said in amazement, "I will stay here until the last day of my life." The comrades looked at me and asked me about my crime. They asked me and I asked. I realized that what brings us together are the crimes of beliefs and politics, and that I find some consolation in that if someone like me can be consoled. They are a rare group of free people who are oppressed by corrupt atmospheres. They heard my story and one of them commented on it, saying, "Even strangers." None of them had disbelieved in God, as this is a crime punishable by beheading, but they were asked critical questions about some of the abnormal behavior that affects justice or human freedom. I saw among them a very old man, over 80, who had spent 50 years in prison, starting during the reign of the previous king, the predecessor of the current king. I saw that he had lost his senses and his memory. He does not know where he is, nor what he has brought, and a small, soulless body lies on his scalp. A voice said, "He is most worthy of our congratulations." So I agreed to what he said without hesitation, and our thoughts hovered around the human situation in this world. There is no happy country. Complaining is the common human language. We are torn between the ugly reality and the unfulfilled dream. But there are better countries. She herself has not yet known satisfaction. And the mountain house? My heart jumped in my chest upon receiving the magical name. I sadly remembered my lost goal, and asked, "What do you know about her?" No more than what is usually said about it being the homeland of perfection. So I asked with interest, "Have you not read a book about it or met any of its visitors?" "No, it is nothing but what is said." "Who makes the dream come true?" "Man, nothing but man. And I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of suffering heartbreak. I was tired of the lies of hope, and I said to myself, I have no world but this eternal prison. I did not find any benefit in the rationalism of my teacher, Sheikh Magaha, in my permanent imprisonment, but I found in my mother's naive fatalism the comfort of despair, as if it were a philosophy created especially for eternal imprisonment. I said surrenderingly, "May God's will be done, for everything that came to me came from Him." I surrendered myself to my fate, buried my hopes, and consigned my past, present, and future to annihilation. The only hope left for a prisoner like me is to kill hope, adapt to the grave that despised me, and marry the dominant, expanding, and entrenched despair. I cast out the ghosts of the homeland, the mother, the bride, the children, and the mountain house. He became accustomed to the foul smell, for there is no smell in existence other than it, and the dim, half-dark light, for there is no light in the place other than it, and the spreading vermin, for they are the owner of the place and have the first right to it, and pain and boredom are my constant companions, and I began to sink into infinite depths. Silence prevails, torment turns into a habit, and despair drains of an amazing strength of endurance and patience. And a voice penetrates the wall of silence, saying, "It is said about an old prisoner that he created a supernatural power in himself until he was able to penetrate the prison wall, as if it were a voice, and flew in the air beyond the borders." Sobri accepts this nonsense graciously. After a day or a year, another voice said, "Perhaps war will break out between Al-Hira and Al-Halab and we will rise again to the surface of the earth." So I forgive those who reminded me of the surface of the earth, and I wonder when I will lose my senses like the happy old man. I descended into the depths, degrees after degrees, as time was lost, the means of life were lost, and history disappeared. I was ignorant of the hour, the day, the month, and the year, and the landmarks disappeared, and my age became a mystery, and I grew up without definition or calculation, and there was no mirror in which I could see myself except my companions, so I could imagine the ugliness and filth I had become. Only vermin and insects enjoyed happiness in our dark world. There is no doubt that generations, eras, and eons pass one by one, and that we taste the taste of annihilation in its eternal majesty. So. Until a new arrival came to us and we gathered around him like vermin, looking in amazement at the one coming from the other world. Despite his old age and his misery, it seemed to me that I was not seeing him for the first time, and the old man had died a long time ago that we do not know, so he took his place, and he began to look at our faces and cry, and someone said, "Don't cry, man, tears harm vermin." A questioner asked him, "Who are you?" He replied pitifully, "I am the wise man, Dizeng." So I came out of my eternal coma, and I shouted in a strange voice, "Dizeng. Dizeng. I can never forget you." He asked me, "Who are you?" So I shouted as I fell in time, "I am your victim." He said with urgency, "We are in the same affliction." I shouted, "No, we are not the same." He shouted, "The world has turned upside down." The army commander revolted against the king, killed him and replaced himself. The comrades came to life, and an uprising of enthusiasm erupted from them, and one of them asked, "What is happening above the surface of the earth?" Dizeng said, "The king's men were killed, but I was sentenced to life imprisonment." The empty sticks were filled with new hope, and the cheers rose for the new god, but I asked him brutally, "Don't you remember me?" He asked me fearfully, "Who are you?" She shouted, "I am the owner of a bride, do you remember me now?" He stepped back cautiously and lowered his head. I asked him, "What happened to her, you scoundrel?" He said with humiliation and despair, "We tried to escape in the convoy going to the arena house, but they arrested me, but she left for the arena." "What about her children?" "We traveled together to the east to search for them, but we found no trace of them." "That happened a long time ago." But I forgot my sorrows while I forgot, and my anger was rising. I shouted at him, "You are not wise, but you are a mean scoundrel. You did not hesitate to frame me for stealing my wife and killing me without the punishment she deserved. The guard's voice came to me from the roof vent, ordering me to stay away from him. I returned to my position, my weak body feeling the sudden surge of life that had swept over it. I sat on my fur, with my back against the wall, extending my legs, receiving once again the flow of life and history. I wanted to ask him about the length of time I spent in prison, but I hated to continue the conversation. However, he looked at me and said sadly, "I am sorry and remorseful." I said angrily, "People like you are not worthy of regret." He said in the same tone, "I received my reward by sleeping with a woman who never stopped hating me." Then it was as if he was telling himself, 20 years had not changed her heart. 20 years. What a waste of life. The answer came to me as harsh as the blade of a dagger. Here the traveler descends to the middle of the 5th episode. He will die one day in this grave, and he has not achieved a goal, nor enjoyed any pleasure, nor performed a duty, and my sadness is doubled by the presence of this scoundrel with me in my grave to remind me of my missteps, my misfortune, and my deviance from my goal. As for the comrades, they were filled with new hope, and they all expected that a comprehensive pardon would be issued to them from one hour to the next. Their hope was not disappointed, and one day the prison director came to us and said, "The will of the new God required issuing a comprehensive pardon to the victims of the treacherous deposed king." We all stood and shouted prayers and support. We left the prison, and only Dizon remained. The coming daylight hurt us because we were accustomed to the darkness, so we covered our eyes with our palms, and an officer took me to the strangers' station. The manager said to me, "We are sorry for the injustice that befell you, which is inconsistent with the principles and laws of Dar al-Hira. It has been decided that your money and belongings will be returned to you, except for the maid who left the country." I immediately went to a public bath, where they shaved my head and body, washed with warm water, and rubbed my head and body with basham oil to eradicate vermin and insects. I went to the Gurabah Hotel expecting an exciting meeting between myself and Ham, but it turned out that the man had died and had been replaced by another named Tad, who was his nephew and son-in-law. The truly interesting encounter was not between me and Ham, but between me and myself in the mirror. I saw the old man's lantern resurrected from his grave after a 20-year burial. An old man with a shaved head and beard, with thin, withered, sunken eyes, a gloomy color and a dead look, and prominent cheeks. Immediately, I decided to remain in the confusion until I regained some health, well-being, and inner balance. I started walking, not to see something new, but to train my feet to walk, and I began to wonder what I should do. Should I return to my homeland satisfied with the spoils on the way back, or should I continue the journey and reconnaissance and knock on the doors of fate? I hated returning home in this state of desolation and disappointment. My heart told me that in my country, I am numbered among the dead, and no one is waiting for me or caring about my return. That is, if death had not overtaken them, then uprooted the roots and sowed alienation and loneliness in their roots. No, I will not return. I will not look back. I started as a traveler, and I will remain a traveler, and I walk on the journey. It is a decision and destiny, imagination and action, a beginning and an end. Then to the courtyard and beyond to the mountain house. Do you see how you look today, O bride, when you are 40 years old?